Okay, now we're on to our next talk, which has got a lovely, lovely, lovely title again. Why marketing is being done wrong and how to do it better. Nice and simple. How to do it better post-pandemic. The speaker is Ollie Marlow, Thomas, founder of AbLib Digital. Ollie, teach us all how to do it better. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. Really excited to be invited to this mad event. I'm Ollie. I'm the founder of AbLib. I'm sitting in a very small, hot booth today, so bear with me. Where I'm going to talk a little bit about why marketers are, or in brackets, were doing it wrong, and where AdLib has helped and support marketers during this pandemic, I guess. So I thought I'd start with the best ad of all time. Some of you guys, most of you guys, I'm sure will know this. I don't know whether you'll know it's been voted the best ad of all time, but this is the Guinness ad. It was a story of surfers. Many of you will recognize it. And it was about waiting for the wave in the same way that you wait for that delicious Guinness pint in the pub. I think, like all of us, have been waiting for a delicious Guinness pint in the pub for a long time now. But I think most of you can relate to that. And I guess this ran in 1999. And just to give you an idea of what the kind of internet was like at that stage, it was like this. Provided very limited opportunity for creativity. In fact, it was all rather plain and rather boring. And I think, the industry at that stage, the internet in particular, didn't support very exciting creative advertising. And what we've seen, I think, has been some developments. This was the first digital ad. This ran on Wired. It was for AT&T, I think. And believe it or not, it had a 0.48 click-through rate. So 1 in every 2 people who saw this ad clicked on it, which is kind of crazy. But I think, to come back to the thing that I'm meant to be talking about, it was for 2 reasons. The first was, I think it told people to click on them, as you can see. But the second thing was that it was innovation, right? And people hadn't seen this kind of innovation before. And the industry has kind of evolved into a billion-dollar industry. Tech is at the center of everything. Users and DSPs and DMPs and ad servers and technology have all played their part. But what's been forgotten, I think, has been the actual thing that the user sees. And marketing's changed very fast, but what certainly hasn't improved is people being able to remember the ads that they saw. Now, usually if this was not a virtual presentation, I would ask you guys to tell me the last ad that you saw. And I think hopefully most of you would say, oh, I saw this thing last night on TV and all that kind of thing. But there's actually 2 ads in the slide before that people just don't recognize. I've only ever had that once spotted. And I think the point is that to cut through and grab the attention of the consumer now is really, really important. So for the last kind of like 3 years, I've been banging on with this data around how important creative is and how it can become the center of how advertising is done and how relevant messaging in particular can be extremely powerful. And I've been showing this slide for a long time, how, TV, still definitely has a place in the marketing mix, but potentially not so many views and eyes on that stuff, whereas a lot of eyes on digital. And so I was kind of intrigued by what would happen when the pandemic came. And what we saw was, huge advancements overnight in the digital space. There was 16 million new subscribers on Netflix. There were 40% growth in sales on Amazon. I've loved this stat. Suddenly people were spending an average of 36 days in 2020 on social media. Crazy, crazy stats. And for me, suddenly this was like, gosh, the world is changing. These ads are not going to be quite as relevant as they once were. For one, we can't go out and film them, right? So there was a big change in the ecosystem. And I felt like this, super excited by this opportunity. I was like, finally, maybe digital creative will become front and center and people will realize that there's a change in mindset that's needed, and marketers need to think a little bit more about how they message, and all the data, all the analytics, all the targeting, that will come second to what the user actually sees. And we've worked on some really fantastic projects with customers during this time. This was a really nice example from Unilever, where the creative that they're originally running was outdoor. It was actually at a rugby game and a football match, and we managed to change the backdrop to help the customer understand that actually advertising would still be relevant if it was inside. Similarly, reusability became very important. Brands didn't have that capability to kind of, I guess, go out and take photos and create new content. And so trying to be able to reuse content and as much as possible was super, super important. So this is a great example from Estee Lauder, where they had seven or eight changes from a creative perspective in a matter of weeks over the Christmas period. Really, really nice. Kept the creative fresh and reduced fatigue. And finally, automation to assist collaboration. Like we saw a lot more brands wanting to understand how they could communicate between the creative and the media agencies, how they could all share ideas and content. So that's it from me, really, really quick. I'm the founder of AdLib, as I say, Ollie. Please do reach out to me. Hopefully that was an interesting story about a bit of a history lesson, followed by a few examples of how marketing's changed post-pandemic. Over to you.
Ollie, fantastic. Thank you so much. I remember both the Guinness ad and that first Google webpage. So what do you think is the most exciting technology we have to play with at the moment or in the next year or so to do what you say, increase the level of creativity in our digital advertising?
Well, I'm interested in artificial intelligence. I think we have some very interesting models that we use we have two in particular. One is an aesthetics model, which helps identify attention. So it looks at like colors, faces, expressions, all that kind of stuff to help drive attention and engagement on the advertising side. And then the other is memorability, which identifies scenes or edits or crops of content and tells us whether, those scenes are deemed to be memorable based on, a face is more memorable than a product shot, which is more memorable than a price point. And this stuff, I think, is going to be extremely powerful for future marketing, and trying to predict performance. The memorability model is actually directly correlated to ad recall. So it has a direct correlation to the stuff we talk about every day on the marketing side.
This is a question from me, because I'm interested. What do you see as the role of AI in just creativity as a concept? We've seen this, over the last few years. We've seen books written and scores developed, and we saw the first artificial creative director in Japan a couple of years ago. So how do you see the role of AI in changing and driving creativity itself? And as a second question, what impact could that have on creatives in our industry?
So I think to answer your second question first, I think the impact that it will have is additive. There's lots of people playing in this space, and we're all saying the same thing: is the big idea is not going anywhere. I think it can be enhanced potentially and informed by artificial intelligence and learnings. But I think it's not replacing the creatives. I think on the first question, we actually have a score at AdLib. And I think just to give you a flavor of this, we spent a lot of time in the early days getting teams of people in our business to kind of score different ads. And I know there's other people out there who do this kind of thing. The really interesting thing is there tends to be a lot of, similarity in the way people score stuff. So even though we may think creative is such a subjective thing, there are paths and trends that humans identify that can be replicated with models. And I think that's what I'm most excited about. It's how they play into the industry and play their part to raise the bar in digital marketing in particular.
Perfect. I want to hear from Laura. She asks, where do you see the improvements over the next 12 months in improving customer experience?
Well, it's so important, Laura. As I sort of said, our industry has been obsessed with data and targeting and programmatic buying, and all of that is so important. But at the moment, we have all of this is having a potentially damaging impact on the industry, right? Because what's actually happening is we're forgetting what we show the customer. And I think that means that digital creative in particular is becoming an afterthought. And that was a benefit that came out of the pandemic, was suddenly brands thinking, oh God, I'm not going to be able to talk to my consumer out of home or in ways that I usually have on paper or whatever. I need to think about how I engage with them online. And so I think that level of effort, more than anything, going into how they approach digital creative is the thing that is making the most impact now.
Excellent. We're out of time. Thank you so much. Lots to think about and a good call to arms for improving creativity. Thank you so much.